Most people believe their lives are shaped by dramatic financial moments. Market crashes, layoffs, windfall opportunities that arrive like lightning strikes. We've been conditioned to look for fire, to wait for warning signs. But in reality, the outcomes that shape your financial life most rarely announce themselves. They don't arrive with urgency. They don't feel dangerous. They often look like progress. In fact, some of the most expensive financial decisions people ever make come disguised as rewards. This is a story about one of them. A promotion. Not the kind that ruins you overnight, but the kind that quietly traps you financially. If you look closely at how lives are actually built, you'll notice something strange. The biggest outcomes don't form during moments of chaos. They form during periods of comfort. In finance, we call this inertia, the tendency of something in motion to stay in motion. In human psychology, inertia has another name, the good enough life. And this is a story about the hidden cost of staying in it. For a long time, Daniel's life was a masterclass in stability. Nothing looked broken. In fact, most people would have said he was doing well. He lived in a one-bedroom apartment that did the job. Safe neighborhood. Neutral walls. Functional furniture. He drove a car that worked. Paid off. Reliable. A depreciated asset that had already reached its plateau. And then there was the job. A mid-level corporate role. Reliable. Competent. Predictable paycheck. To Daniel, this felt like safety. He believed he had reached equilibrium. But here's the thing about equilibrium. It's often a mask for stagnation. His days followed a rhythm so consistent it became invisible. Wake up. Commute. Work through tasks that felt productive but rarely felt meaningful. Go home. Eat. Scroll. Sleep. On weekends, he rested just enough to repeat the cycle. He felt the Sunday scaries, but they were manageable. Contained. He told himself this was adulthood. He looked around and saw the same pattern everywhere. Manageable debt, modest upgrades, reasonable expectations. From the outside, nothing demanded change. But beneath the surface, Daniel was operating at low yield. He wasn't losing money, but he was leaking something far more valuable. Time. Because nothing felt urgent, nothing changed. He was a buy-and-hold investor in a life that had stopped growing. The psychological term for this is loss aversion. Daniel wasn't staying because he loved his life. He was staying because he was afraid of what he might lose if he tried for something more. He had a good enough portfolio, and rebalancing it felt risky. What he didn't realize was that not choosing is still a choice. And it's often the most expensive one. Then, quietly, the signal arrived. Not with drama. Not with suspense. A calendar invite. 15 minutes. Tuesday afternoon. In corporate life, meetings like this represent a fork in the road. For Daniel, it was a promotion. His manager leaned back and said the words every ambitious person wants to hear. You've been doing great work. We want you to step up. In an instant, Daniel's human capital was repriced. 25% more income. A new title. A surge of validation. This wasn't just more money. It was identity reinforcement. The scoreboard finally said he was winning. At first, the extra money sat untouched. He told himself he'd save it. Invest it. Build security. But then something subtle happened. The hedonic treadmill started turning. Within weeks, the raise stopped feeling like a bonus. It became his new baseline. And once that happens, your environment starts to feel outdated. Daniel noticed things he had ignored for years. The worn carpet, the old car noise, the apartment that no longer felt like it matched his level. Nothing was broken. It just wasn't optimal anymore. So he began making reasonable upgrades. He moved to a nicer apartment, not much bigger, just better located. He told himself it was an investment in mental health. In reality, he had converted variable income into a fixed liability. He traded liquidity for aesthetics. Then came the car. Not flashy. Sensible. European. He justified it as professional signaling. But with each signature, something else happened. Daniel's burn rate increased. His margin shrank. And his ability to fail quietly disappeared. He felt like he was flying. In reality, he was becoming operationally rigid. This is the moment most people miss. The trap isn't debt. It's structural dependency. When Daniel earned less, his life was liquid. He could quit, take time off, say no. But now his monthly nut, the cost of simply existing, had tripled. Rent, car payments, insurance, social expectations. His income went up, but his margin vanished. He had become a high-income, low-optionality individual. The psychological shift came quietly. In meetings, he stopped pushing back. He accepted projects he didn't believe in, not because he agreed, but because resistance had become expensive. He wasn't being paid for skill anymore. He was being paid for compliance. This is the golden cage in its final form. Success that increases your vulnerability instead of reducing it. The realization hit during layoffs. Daniel survived. Others didn't. People with larger homes, larger payments, larger lifestyles, gone. That's when he understood. They weren't wealthy. They were just highly paid temps. That night, Daniel performed a personal audit. 2 columns. What I own. What owns me. Everything new was on the right side. That's when the shift happened. Real wealth isn't about what you can buy. It's about what you can walk away from. Daniel didn't quit. He deleveraged. Cheaper apartment. Reliable car. Lower burn rate. With every cut, his bargaining power returned. Margin came back. Optionality returned. He wasn't poorer. He was freer. A $100,000 income with $2,000 monthly expenses is wealth. A $500,000 income with no margin is a liability. Most people wait for a sign to start their life. But the hidden outcome of waiting for security is building a cage you can't afford to leave. If this story felt uncomfortable, it's because it's common. Maybe you're Daniel at the beginning. Maybe you're in the middle. Or maybe you're ready for the audit. Progress isn't always more. Sometimes, progress is choosing less, so you can eventually have everything. Success that costs you the ability to say no isn't success. It's a bad trade. And in the market of life, the only currency that matters is freedom. Welcome to the audit.